Josh, I retired on January 1st, 2015, but I had saved up some vacation before that retirement date. So it was right around Christmas time, about 2 weeks before then, that I actually left work. And just to give you a sense of the contrast between that year that I retired and the year before, in 2013 during Christmas, which happens to be one of my favorite times of the year. And I was working on a major transaction for our company. And the 2 weeks before Christmas was spent on the telephone or emails or getting texts almost constantly from our lawyers that were working on it, from our people that were doing due diligence, and then some of our transaction people who were trying to draft agreements and get some paperwork finalized. So I was on the phone constantly for those 2 weeks, and even during Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, I spent on the telephone answering emails and doing that sort of thing. So when I retired, the day I retired, and I found myself jobless just before Christmas, I can't tell you what a relief it was not to have to worry about no phone calls, no emails, no text. I just got to enjoy the time, doing some Christmas shopping and spending it with some of the kids. And I guess I would have to say that was probably a pretty ecstatic feeling on that first day to realize I didn't have to worry about some of those responsibilities. And it became pretty clear to me pretty quickly that what I was going to miss about work was the people that I worked with. I think there's predominantly 2 or 3 different kinds of personalities that retire. There's the people that are very purposeful. They've got a certain talent, a certain skill. Maybe they restore cars. I remember watching the video that Barrow Turner did for you all, and here he had this not only talent but skill, and he's sounded like he had turned that into a pretty profitable business. So very purposeful. And then I think there's the people who are kind of lazy. They just sit in a chair and rock and I guess just enjoy not doing anything. And then there's those who are kind of like a new puppy in a dog park. You see them running from bush to bush, dog to dog, place to place, and they look like they're very busy and accomplishing some things, but not with a lot of purpose to it. And I kind of think I'm in that third category. Anytime at work that I took some of the personality tests that asked this question, I usually came out as a learner. That was my top personality trait, I suppose. And I think that's right. I like to learn new things. And a lot of times I feel like a jack of all trades, a master of none. But I've carried that into retirement as well. I haven't got that many talents or skills particularly, but my focus has just been learning how to do different things. And for example, when we acquired a dog, a Black Russian Terrier, just before I retired, with the idea that we were going to take this dog and train him and show him. And matter of fact, I have to show you this. This was a picture of a Black Russian Terrier that Lacey Brummett did for me. And those of you who know Brian here at AFI know that he's left-brained and his wife has the artistic talent. And she did this beautiful picture, and that's Ivan on one of his very best days. But we acquired him, and a lot of people, when they show a dog, they hire a handler and do that sort of thing. But I wanted to learn how to handle the dog myself. And so we did that, and there was some ups and downs. You can see one of the times when Ivan was not cooperative in the ring, and fortunately, he was cooperative enough time that he was able to earn his AKC champion status. But after a while, it got sort of tiresome. We were traveling around in a travel trailer to some of these different dog shows and showing him, and it got a little tiresome to do that on a regular basis. And so my wife and I thought, well, what can we do with the dog that would be a little closer to home? And we heard about the pet therapy program at Holston Valley, and so I decided that maybe I'd try to train him to be able to be part of that pet therapy program. And so we went through that training and learned how to handle a dog around patients and staff. And so our big old 150-pound furry black giant became a favorite, really, among a lot of the patients and the staff. For some reason, they just tend to gravitate to a big dog, I guess. And so we enjoyed that a lot. In fact, we took him to visit patients and staff in ICU, in the emergency room, in some places in the hospital where even family didn't go. We were allowed to go in and try to cheer up the patients. And that was a lot of fun. And unfortunately, COVID came along and stopped that for us. And in that 3 or 4 year hiatus, we haven't been able to take him back. So he's now just a big furry pet, I guess, at home. But, COVID drove a lot of people inside and kept them at home. And, of course, for a retiree, we spend a lot of time at home anyway. And so with the less restaurant time, I decided maybe I should learn how to try to cook some things myself here at home. And that's what got me interested in smoking meat and making barbecue. There's a picture of the offset grill that I got from an outfit in Texas. And I managed to get quite a collection of wood. I've got hickory and pecan and oak and apple and cherry and mesquite, maple, ash, a lot of different kind of woods to smoke with. And I'm happy to say that I was able to learn how to make some barbecue. And I'll put a couple of examples of some of the things we made in some pictures here. And I feel like they came out pretty good. And our families had the opportunity to enjoy baby back ribs that have been smoked, St. Louis ribs, pork butt, pulled pork loin, pork belly. We smoked turkeys at Thanksgiving, even tried smoking the duck one time. And kind of one of the crowd favorites or family favorites is is jerky that we make on the grill. And so we've had a lot of fun doing that. But, I found out in the course of doing the barbecue that most of my grandchildren, and unfortunately my wife especially, while they like barbecue, they really like pizza. So, so I felt the calling to learn how to make pizza on a pizza oven that had the stone in it and all. So we got a pizza oven, and my wife had the job of perfecting the dough, and I've learned how to cook it. And those pizza ovens cook pizzas anywhere in temperatures of 700 to 900 degrees, and we've enjoyed some pretty good pizza that's been done in that pizza oven. A big difference between barbecue. Barbecue takes anywhere from 3 hours to 15 hours, depending on the meat that you're cooking and what you're trying to do. And at 800 degrees or 900 degrees, it takes about 90 seconds to do a wood-fired or a gas-fired pizza. So you can get a lot of pizzas done in a short amount of time. My grandchildren have inspired me a little bit. Two of them have aspirations to be in the Dobyns Bennett Orchestra at some point. One plays the violin, one plays the cello, and I love the sound of a cello, that baritone bass sound. And so I acquired a cello here recently, and I've been taking lessons and hoping to get beyond Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star here sometime this year. But it's just something else to learn. I guess for a person whose personality trait is learner, retirement is a great time to learn a lot of different things and do some things that I wouldn't have had an opportunity to do whenever I was working. I think if I were to identify an opportunity that we seized on, that we really didn't anticipate doing before we retired, I'd have to relate a visit that we took to Topsail Island over in North Carolina, particularly North Topsail Beach. And we went over there for a few days on a vacation, my wife and I did, just to see what it was like. And we fell in love with the place. I mean, it was the family-oriented atmosphere, of course, very close to Camp Lejeune, the Marine base there, and so a lot of well-disciplined people that visit the beach there. And not only was it family-oriented, but just had some beautiful views. And while we were there, I told Lauren, I said, well, we ought to go look at some of the properties, that might be available here. And she said, well, if you promise me you won't buy anything, we can go look at some of the properties. I said, well, I'm not an impulsive buyer. We just go look at them. And so we did. And we found a property that just had a beautiful ocean view. And when we found out that the particular property was pretty affordable, I broke my promise, and that weekend I signed a contract on the house. And just a few weeks later, we actually purchased it. And I think it's been a good thing. We've used it as a place to vacation with our children and grandchildren. They usually come and try to spend at least a week with us, and sometimes we're lucky and get them there for a couple of weeks in the summertime. And so we've enjoyed a vacation, using it as a vacation with them. It's a quiet place that Lo and I can retreat to whenever we want to. And one of the nice things is, since we bought it in 2017, I think it's probably doubled in value during that period of time. So we've been very blessed from that standpoint. So that was kind of an opportunity that we seized, and one we didn't anticipate, but I'm glad that we did. But Josh, I do think relationships change when you retire. I think maybe in three areas particularly comes to mind. And one of those areas is the folks that you worked with for so many years. And for me, I'd have to admit that I probably haven't had a serious interaction with those people since I've retired. And as much as I thought of them, they were some of the finest people in the world, and good at their jobs, and I really enjoyed working with them. But since leaving, I guess not having that day-to-day 8, 10, 12 hours a day, I mean, 10 hours we were spending up at work, time to spend together, we've drifted apart. And now many of them, for me, are just a fond memory. And so that relationship changed, and not really, I didn't really expect that. And I think there's some people who are much better about maintaining those relationships, perhaps, than I've been. And I think my relationship with my family, though, is deeper and richer than it was before. Of course, my poor wife, she gets twice the husband and at least half the salary, maybe even less than that, and not near the shopping time that she had when I was working every day. But most of the time we do just about everything together these days. I've had more time to spend with my grandchildren and my children. But, I mentioned the vacations, that we're able to spend at the beach. And then sometimes we're able to go when they've got a presentation where they're doing, whether it's band or orchestra, some of the plays that they're doing, we get to go see. It fits our schedule, obviously. And some of the sports that they participate in, we get to see too that we otherwise may not have been able to see. So I think that's been it's been very good as well. And I'd have to say my parents, they both passed away in 2024 here this past year, but lived into their 90s. And through COVID, we spent quite a bit of time with them doing some things that they couldn't get out and do, and perhaps even more time with them after as age took its toll on their physical abilities. And we got to really, I think, appreciate the change that they experienced from the 1920s to the 2020s and over that period of almost 100 years, and to realize what all change they had to adapt to was quite eye-opening. And I think even though sometimes spending that time was difficult or maybe was inconvenient, looking back from where I am now, I wouldn't trade that time for anything. I think, and this may be a function of just getting older, and that's what we do in retirement. We get older, but we have more time maybe to meditate and think about things. And I think that through that time, my relationship with God and with His Son, with Jesus Christ, has become something more that I have focused on. And again, perhaps that's just a kind of thing we do as we get older. But after a long life of sometimes good decisions, a lot of times bad decisions, sometimes messing up, and going through the ups and downs that we always do, I appreciate more and more God's mercy and His forgiveness. And as I appreciate that, I like to think that I have become a little more merciful and a little more forgiving myself. You would certainly think so when I hear my children tell my grandchildren, "That is not the man I grew up with and called Dad." So something's changed. I hope it's for the better. And I think at 70, it's almost like getting a bird's eye view of your life. You can go back and you can see the path that you traveled, the path that led you to your wife, the path that led you ultimately to your career job, and to make certain decisions that you made. And I can look back and see God's hand in all of that. And maybe didn't really appreciate it as much when I was younger and actually going through it. But I think being able to see that makes that relationship with God and with Christ all the more sure, all the sweeter. I don't know that my perspective on life has changed all that much. I was raised in a Christian home. I became a Christian early in life. I've maintained a faith in God and what He's promised throughout life, and I'll admit, even through the ups and downs, that perspective hasn't changed a lot. But I think if you believe in God, if you're a Christian and you believe that there's a life after this life, it helps you through some of those ups and downs, and it enables you to deal with sometimes the suffering that you go through when you lose a loved one or somebody gets sick or or something like that. I think you can deal with a lot of heartache and depression and suffering if you have that perspective. And so that hasn't changed a whole lot. I guess the one perspective that probably has changed is the perspective that I think what we talked a little bit about before was just what to expect of the aging process. The Bible tells us when Moses, when he came to die, his eyes were not dimmed and his strength was not diminished. And maybe subconsciously, I think, yeah, that's the way I'm going to be. Regardless how old I am when I die, I'll be able to see and be as strong as I've ever been. And what I found out is that's just absolutely not true. The older you get, the weaker you get. You don't see as well. Your hearing becomes a little harder. Sometimes we're inflicted with disease. Maybe it's cancer. Maybe it's a time bomb of a liver, that you're dealing with. There's aches and pains that you can't explain. And so the perspective I have is I've got to come to grips with that's just life. And I've got to deal with that. And so I got to make a decision. And again, I don't know that it's so much retirement or if this is the kind of things that happen, after people retire. But I got to decide, am I just going to be a grumpy old man because I'm experiencing pain, or am I going to be more of an optimist, somebody who lives for each moment, is thankful for each moment when you don't have pain and living through the ones that you do. And I watched my dad, in the last year of his life, come to that same realization as he lost a lot of strength, and he found out that he had to depend on other people, and sometimes he had to ask for help, but he did it in a way that I think was a good example. He always thanked people for the help they provided, and he tried not to be a bother, although we encouraged him sometimes. It's okay. They'll help you. Be a bother. It's okay. But he didn't want to do that. And he always, in his room, he kept a big bowl of candy, and he would get some help from somebody, and he'd say, thank you. And don't forget to get a piece of candy on your way out. So he became a favorite. And I think that's the way, that's a perspective I'd like to have. Is that sometimes you just have to depend on others and realize what the process of aging does for you. As far as where I'm, what's next, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm convinced. Jeremiah 29:11 says God's got a path out there. It's meant for good, not for evil. It's meant that I might have future and hope. And so that's where I am now. And whether I've got a few years or a lot of years, that path's already been laid out. And I'd like to believe that I can handle that in the moment by moment, not to worry about the future, not worry about the past. As far as advice goes, I guess the advice I have probably for people who are anticipating retirement. And there's two things I would say, and neither one of you, just as a disclaimer, neither one of you knew I was going to say this. Neither one of you asked me to say this, but I believe it very much. I think your best chance at having at least a retirement. One thing you don't want to worry about in retirement is, can I afford it? Will I have the money to do this? Will I have enough to be able to support myself and not be a burden on my children or my grandchildren? And I think it's important to get a good financial advisor as early as you can. I personally was 5 years before I retired that I started that. It worked out very well for me. I was fortunate to have that 5 years. The only thing I wish is that I'd started it 10 years before, but I think would even been better. We've now clients of AFI. That's where who we deal with now, they're excellent. I enjoy working with Brian, with Robert. I know Chastity hates to see me coming because I've always got some crazy requests, but she's so good about answering those. And we just think everybody here is wonderful. But a financial advisor can help you come up with a plan to invest your money, to be disciplined about it. And if you're smart and you talk to them about savings and about maybe big purchases that you have in mind, they can sometimes maybe talk you out of it or say, maybe it's a good thing to put that off a little while, and then and help you set a target for retirement. When is it that I want to retire? And make sure that when that time comes, that you're financially able to do it and you feel comfortable doing it. And I suppose along that same line, I know many people that I talk about retiring when they're 65 or 70, and that's when I'm going to retire and do all the things I couldn't do when I was working. And I would encourage anybody who has that plan, if they possibly can, to try to move up that timeline. In the United States, the vast majority of men will experience a life-changing health issue before they're 65 years old. So when you're in your 50s and you're thinking, I'm going to go on that ski trip, I'm going to go hunting, I'm going to go traveling, and things like that, thinking that you'll be in exactly the shape that you're in your 50s, you may not be in that shape by the time you get to be 65 or 70. And so I would encourage you, again, if you can, and not everybody can, but try to retire a little earlier than that 65, if you can, so that you can have that retirement and do those things that you've been dreaming about, and so that the statistics don't catch up with you.